going on, y'all? Terrell from 7 Minute Ministries. So, just thinking about some posts I made recently on Facebook and thinking about my experience in seminary. And what I'm realizing is the hardest thing about seminary is not necessarily the classes or going through all the historical data that they give you in terms of church history and the Bible and things like that. The toughest thing is, what do you do with the information? So, for instance, let's just say I take everything that I've gained at Wesley Seminary back to someone who is traditional in their beliefs or has never had any seminary training, or they don't use any tools outside of the Bible itself, just because they either rely on the pastor's word or their pastors don't really preach or use or let them know about other resources. So I have all this information, and you give it to people, and it's almost contrary to anything that they've been taught, anything that they've been exposed to, or anything that they've even heard or seen. Case in example, I always point to one particular scripture reference. And it was one of the first things we learned in Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, the first part of the Old Testament, which is that there's a potential for two creation stories. So if you look at Genesis 1, you see that in terms of the order of creation, you see that God created animals, then he created humankind. In Genesis 2, the order is different. God created Adam, then he created animals, and then he created Eve, or God created Eve. I don't subscribe to the fact that God is a he, but that's a discussion for another time. So we learn this type of stuff in seminary. We learn all of this historical data, this great historical evidences of Christ. We learn about cultures. So we learn, in terms of the actual writing, we learn about the culture in which these texts were written. So we get a feel and sense of what text actually meant. And we also learn about church history. So we learn when the Bible was actually formed, created. We get dates associated with some of the books. We talk about when the canon was actually closed, which was in 397. But yet, when we have discussions with people outside of this seminary circle, it's almost as if we're heretics and we don't know what we're talking about. So for a few students or a few classmates of mine, and just in passing discussions, they said they would never take the stuff we learned back to their churches and back to their congregations because the people wouldn't know how to handle it. So I don't blame the people who don't know. I blame the leaders. Anyone who has a seminary training and knows anything about church history, knows anything about creation stories or the different voices in the Bible or how the Bible was composed and when it was composed, if you stay on the surface with your congregation, you are at fault. And it does people like myself. Actually, it does the community harm because you keep them at a level that is, to me, in my particular opinion, you keep them at a level that's pretty immature in terms of learning and experiencing the things that you've learned and experienced in seminary. So for all of those seminary trained professionals, pastors, preachers, reverends, you need to expose your congregations to everything you learn. Otherwise, they may be lost. So that's the toughest thing for me in being in seminary, is the fact that I have all of this, and once I start introducing it to people, people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm not.